What's going on, everybody? We are back for episode 64 of the Club and Sub podcast. Good to be back this week after a nice little week off. As usual, brought to you guys by betonline.ag for a 50% bonus up to your first $1,000 deposit. Use the promo code CLUBSUB. So we got 4 months left. 1/3 of the year left to go. Going to try to make it as profitable as the last 2 were. With that, you got me, John Stargarian, and MA Fox, Lags at Lags_the Capper, and Luke at SWR_betting. Got an interesting slate here tonight. I think I was just saying to Lags and Luke before we went on, I think it's going to be pretty entertaining, but in terms of betting, it's kind of So, yeah, I mean, with that, we'll hop right into it. And the first fight of the night, I actually do have a bet with that said. It's not one I feel particularly great about, but I bet Emily Whitmire here. I put a unit on her, -120. Look, I get it. Emily Whitmire, not very good, has consistently kind of underperformed her lines in these spots. But I also just kind of think contextualizing Whitmire's career is kind of important. She's lost as a favorite 3 times in the USC, but they were to Jillian Robertson, Polyana Viana, and Amanda Ribas. Now, should she have been a favorite in those spots? Probably not. But nonetheless, the market thought she was. In terms of her game, look, she's not a very good striker by any means, but she's active. And she's actually a decent grappler. Is she world class? No, obviously she got guard sub by Viana and sub by Ribas. But again, Hannah Goldie's not presenting any of the challenges that either Ribas or Viana presented to her here. I actually think it's a pretty clear grappling edge for Whitmire if she pursues it. I actually don't think she's a horrible wrestler. I mean, she's okay. And on the other side of Goldie, it's just I get the concerns with Whitmire striking. Look, she's not a good striker, but is Hannah Goldie a good striker? That's what I don't really get. Diana Belbita, look, she hits hard and she's aggressive, but I don't think she's anything special, and she was touching her up at will. We saw the same thing in the Miranda Granger fight. And so, I think there's a pretty significant grappling edge for Whitmire. And on the feet, it's close. And, look, Whitmire might not pursue the grappling edge aggressively, but me thinking it's close on the feet with that upside being there, it's hard for me to cap her below 60% in this spot. So it's a small play, but I just generally think, Whitmire's coming off losing the 2 girls who were much, much, much better than Hannah Goldie. I don't really think either of those losses should even really be taken into consideration with this fight. So I think it's a good spot for her. Lags, what do you think?
To be honest with you, I think it's just two pretty untrustworthy girls. And it's obviously the bookmakers see that, -110 a piece to take them. I don't really, fault you for taking the shot on Whitmire. I think, she has that wrestling path. But, could I see Goldie just striking from the outside to a decision? Sure. I don't really have a strong opinion here. I just kind of think it is the bookmakers have it a coin flip.
Yeah, fair. Luke, what do you think?
Yeah, I kind of slightly lean Whitmire as well. No play for me, more so just because I don't have a supreme degree of confidence in her shooting a ton of takedowns or having a ton of success. To your point, I think that the path is there and she is better there. And if she does take it and does have success, then I think, -120, -130, is going to look like a pretty solid play. I just don't have a strong degree of confidence in that. To be honest, I was actually considering taking a small flyer on the under 2.5 as a pretty much bet the under 2.5 in every single Whitmire fight. And it's been a pretty decent profitable angle. But the problem is that Goldie, she just is a decision machine, doesn't hit very hard. The grappling, is also just kind of hard to assess in general in her fights. So yeah, the fight in general is a pass for me, but I am leaning Whitmire.
Yeah, moving on, we got an interesting fight in the bantamweight division. We got Gustavo Lopez taking on Alateng. Lags, what are your thoughts here?
So kind of similar to the last fight, it's also a pass for me, but I lean the Alateng side here because I think, on the feet, it might be, somewhat 50-50. I think Alateng hits a little bit harder, and I think he's a more durable fighter. Not to mention, I don't think he's as hittable. I think Lopez is fairly hittable on the feet, but I think Alateng has a huge grappling advantage here and could grind this out for 15 minutes, to be honest with you. So I lean Alateng here, but again, with no supreme confidence.
Luke, how about you?
Yeah, this is probably the main fight on the card that I really have no opinion on at all, just because I don't think we've seen Lopez really faced much overall wrestling resistance. Obviously, Marab tossed him around, but that's Marab. The sample in general there is pretty low. So I don't know. To me, I think it almost seems like a little too simple. Like people are just picking Alateng, assuming that he's just going to wrestle Lopez to death. I mean, I'm not 100% convinced on that. Lopez does come from a wrestling background, is actually a decent grappler, can be good from top position. He's going to let his hands fly too. Both guys are going to chuck heat, defensive issues. So I actually kind of think it turns out to be like a blood and guts war, and Lopez actually just does more and wins that way. But probably my least confident take of the entire card.
Yeah. It's funny because I actually want to bet Alateng here, but I've kind of been toying with it, and the lines now kind of move pretty hard on me since then. I still might bet him. I haven't decided. I guess my view on the fight is neither guy is a particularly active guy, but Lopez is pretty willing to accept the back foot. And as bad as Alateng looked against Kenny, and he did look bad, I didn't think it was he was that bad because he's bad so much as he's not active and Kennedy is absurdly active. So you basically had one guy who's constantly getting off against the guy who never does. In this fight, Lopez isn't really going to push a very heavy pace against Alateng. And so on the feet, I think I'd favor Lopez a little bit technically, but he will accept the back foot. It's probably going to be very, very low volume. And in terms of power, it's probably close and maybe even favor Alateng. And I do think Lopez is pretty hittable. And then obviously, again, there's the grappling upside. And unlike the fight that we talked about before this, Emily Whitmire, Alateng is pretty reliable to grapple. The problem is Alateng going to actually hold him down if he does get takedowns? And that I'm not so sure about. But for me, looking at the fight, I think the stand-up is going to be pretty close to 50-50. And again, Alateng has the grappling upside in his back pocket and probably has a bit more KO upside. Plus, just generally looking at what they've done, you can, shit on Alateng for his activity, but, the guy won decisions against Benoit and Dana Bakuri. And so it's I can't, Lopez has done nothing to make me think he can hang with guys at that level. And so I lean Alateng. I might bet him, but I haven't really made any kind of decision yet. Moving on. We have Impa Kasanganay taking on Carlston Harris. Luke, I'll stick with you. You have a bet here, right?
Yeah, I played Terra Small for a unit at plus 110. More so of just kind of a questions answered type of play on Kasanganay. Just haven't really seen him be forced to defensively wrestle or grapple much. Harris is pretty willing to do that, and I think that also just in theory limits Impa's probably main path, which is just pressure-based boxing here, where he probably has striking advantages and maybe some sneaky finishing potential. So I do think Harris can kind of just get in on the inside. And even if he's not able to necessarily flatten Impa, all the time at all these points, he does a pretty good job of just kind of riding the back, controlling from those body lock positions and really making guys work. So yeah, and even when Impa kind of comes in with those flurries as well, I think those clinch opportunities are going to be there for Harris to lock up. And I think you might be able to put Impa in some tricky spots. But if I'm wrong and he's not able to really have any sort of that wrestling success, I do think Impa is the better striker. But at a plus number, when I think Harris should be a slight favorite, I was willing to take it.
Yeah, fair. I thought about playing Impa, but ultimately passed pretty much because of what you said. There's very, very real grappling questions about Impa, and there's some sketchy footage if you go back to his regional scene of him on bottom. And he's in that part of his career where he should be getting better. I'd assume he has, but again, we don't really know that. In terms of the fight itself, the reason I thought of playing Impa is because I'm just really pretty anti-Harris. I ultimately passed, but I almost played Aguilera against him in his last fight. My view on him, I guess, is his process is good. The guy's going to attempt a ton of takedowns, but I don't actually think his wrestling is very good. He's very good out of the body lock. The problem is when you hit a certain level, just getting body lock takedown stops being available. Guys can pummel for underhooks, work out of the clinch. And I don't really think Harris has much of an answer to that when that starts happening. Will Impa be that guy? I'm not sure. On the feet, I agree. I think Impa's better, but I do think Harris is reasonably dangerous. So I guess I come down, the line is probably accurate. I just can't as much as I was tempted to play Impa, I can't fade Harris with the questions with Impa's ground game. Lags, what do you think?
So, John, I coming along the lines of you kind of similarly as well. Like, I like him in the spot as well, too, but ultimately going to be a pass. But for me, it's like Harris's defensive grappling actually isn't that great, as we see. Like, when he's stuck on bottom, he doesn't really throw up a ton of submissions. He's not really, working to get up a ton. So it's like, if Impa's able to land takedowns here, I think he could control him and ride him out. But, like, again, like we touched on, Impa's if Impa gets put in bad positions, we don't really know how that's going to turn out. So, like, for me, again, I think the line could be right, but I think Impa could land takedowns here. And again, I think it could be a sneaky good bet.
Yeah, fair. That makes sense. Moving on, Luke, I'm going to stick with you again. We have Erin Blanchfield taking on Sarah Alpar. What are your thoughts?
War Blanchfield. Yeah, no, it's kind of nice to finally see the girl make her debut. I definitely thought her original booking against Dumont up at 135 was not an optimal debut at all. She was going to be very undersized in that matchup and probably would have got finished, to be honest. But now she's getting a step down back at her rightful weight class, and a girl in Sarah Alpar, in my opinion, who is lucky to even be in the UFC, who's just kind of squeaked some stuff in her I should say her title win on LFA and her W to get a contract on the Contender Series as well. Blanchfield's the best submission grappler that Alpar's fought. I know Alpar is a wrestler, but if she's really going to want to go into the guard of Blanchfield, I'm not sure how smart of an idea that is. I know, despite Blanchfield being a strong grappler on paper, it might not necessarily have always translated to like her record. It's not like she has 10,000 submissions, but out of her, 7 pro wins, she's fought 3 girls that are in the UFC now and all gave them really competitive fights, if not beat them too. So, at 22 years old, haven't seen her in a year. I think we can see some massive improvements in that year off, especially with a girl in her early 20s who I have seen consistent improvements from her since she was 18. I think her striking has come quite a ways. I think that's definitely a part of her game that she still needs to work on quite a bit. If she gets thrown in there with an upper level striker who can stuff takedowns, she might be in some trouble, but that's just really not the case here. Alpar, she'll come forward and wing big shots, but she's been sat down a couple times too. She's getting her face boxed off in the majority of her fights, so I think it's a decent spot for Blanchfield. I'm not willing to lay minus 300 on it, but I am considering actually playing Blanchfield inside the distance. I think it's taken a little bit of steam, but I think you can still grab it around like plus 220 or so. I do think that's a tad off given some of the potential finishing sequences and positions I think Blanchfield can get in this fight. People are just kind of looking. It's a WMMA fight. It's going to go over. I don't know. I think Blanchfield ITD, instead of just playing the sub, I think is interesting because I think she could positionally TKO as well. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Like one of my, I almost never say I regret not betting a women's minus 200, but one of my bigger regrets from the last year was probably not betting Jessica Rose Clark against Sarah Alpar, because I had taped that fight and I was like, man, this girl is absolute trash. And Jessica Rose Clark's pretty good. She should handle her with ease. But I was like, oh, WMMA and the girl tries to wrestle a lot. Like, I have to avoid it. And sure enough, JRC looked like she was minus 900 in that fight, which probably is what the line should have been. I just think it's funny because now you look at this line and it's like Erin Blanchfield's being lined wider than Jessica Rose Clark was. I don't really disagree with it, to be honest. I agree with most of what you said, Luke. I don't really think – I guess if you were to kind of draw up the Alpar path to victory, it would be a lot of cage push, maybe 3 or 4 takedowns. I'm just not really confident that she can, like you said, do much of the takedowns when she gets them and probably puts herself in danger. On the feed, it's pretty one-way traffic. I like Blanchfield as a prospect. I don't think she's coming for the strap or anything like that. But in terms of like the younger women in this division, she's probably has more upside than most of them. And so, yeah, I don't think inside the distance is a bad poke. I think Blanchfield should probably win this fight however she wants. I'm never going to lay minus 300 on a female debutante. It's just not going to happen. But I do think Blanchfield's going to handle her. Lags, what do you think?
I don't have much to say here on this one. I think kind of similar to our next fight we see with Montel Jackson and JP Baes. I don't really know why this fight should be booked, to be honest with you. I think she should handle her with ease, and I think she's a solid parlay piece again as well.
Nice. Yeah. So moving on, Legs, I'll stick with you here. Montel Jackson versus JP Baes. What do you think?
So again, like it's like minus 600, minus 700 Montel Jackson. I don't really know about that, but like the under 2.5 is kind of interesting spot to me because again, like JP Baes, all of his wins, he's getting finishes, and all of his losses, he's getting finished. But like the issue with that is like fucking Montel Jackson couldn't finish Felipe Clark, Andre Sukmatov. It's like I had, there were solid spots there for him to get finishes, but like I don't know. For me, it's like I don't think JP Baes is solid, durability wise enough. So I think Montel Jackson could find a finish, but the urgency of Montel, I just don't love it.
Yeah, fair. Luke, what do you think?
Yeah, originally I kind of went in thinking I might be taking the flyer on Baes, but after doing a lot of tape on him, I just really actually don't like what I've seen with him on bottom, to be honest. Obviously, I know he comes from a strong wrestling background, but he has been out wrestled in like probably 3 or 4 fights as well to boot. Obviously, massively undersized here. We all did fade Jackson and cash that bet on Brett Johns. I just don't think JP Baes is the caliber of wrestler of a Brett Johns or a Ricky Simone, who honestly, even in watching those fights back, I mean, Montel put up quite a bit of resistance. It's not like he necessarily just got tossed around for 15 minutes. I mean, he was working back up. He was making guys work, was landing strikes. I think it's kind of it's a tough spot for JP personally. I think Montel finishes him here.
Yeah, I'm still thinking of playing Baes, but like I largely agree with like everything you said. I guess for me, the thing is really when you're talking about a minus 600, that's just such a big number. And I don't really think skills wise, I wouldn't say it's not a mismatch. Like I think Jackson probably has better skills, but I think Jackson's real advantages in this fight are really more physical than they are technical. And, that's probably enough, to be honest. But like to cover that number is so hard. And like, I just have so many issues with Jackson's defensive grappling. I agree with you. Like he did put up resistance against Johns, and it helps that he's got hands the size of meat cleavers where he can just grab wrists when he's on his flattened out and not allow you to advance position or do anything. It's pretty remarkable. But the guy's base on the fence is so bad and he's so easy to take down. I guess the problem for me is though, it's like that's part of it, because I do think Baes can have success early in this fight. If you told me Baes lands 2 or 3 takedowns and wins round 1, I won't be really very surprised at that at all. I sort of think if he doesn't get killed in space, he's got a pretty good shot to win round 1. The problem is Baes doesn't have very good cardio, and he is extremely fragile. And so I don't want to call him a quitter because he's still very early in his career, but it seems like when things start going south for JP, they go south like in a hurry. And so I don't think he can win. I feel pretty comfortable that Jackson's going to win the last round of this fight pretty convincingly if he doesn't finish him before that. And I don't think Baes I don't think he can make up for the physical gap with any kind of technical edge, because I think at best he's even technically in the grappling with Montel, and striking, it's not going to be very close. So again, I think the line is wide. Like it's just such a huge number for a fight that's like, I get it. Everybody said Montel Jackson, future champ, but the guy, he beat Kelleher because he dropped him and hurt him bad in the first exchange of that fight. And then he beat Suk, Kalarish, and Jesse Strader. Like, that's not really blowing my hair back, But, you can't ignore the stuff with JP. Plus the fact that I'm not really buying the JP is a different fighter at 135 Kool-Aid, to be honest. The guy's 5'5". He should not be fighting at 135 in all likelihood, if we're being honest. And I don't hate JP Baes' game, but yeah, I'm thinking of playing Baes after all of that said and done. I don't know if I will. It purely is a chuck against Montel being minus 600 against anybody with a pulse, but we'll see. Moving on, we have Nicholas Moda versus Cameron Van Camp. Luke, you want to take this one away? Because I did not tape Cameron Van Camp.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Obviously, Moda was supposed to fight Jim Miller originally. Miller fell out. In comes this Van Camp guy. Another grappler, I suppose. The large majority of his wins come by sub. He's shown, some decent wrestling competency. So I guess it's kind of like, I would say, a similar archetype to Jim Miller, but like Walmart Jim Miller, probably, and on short notice as well. But what I will say and give the guy credit for, he seems to be pretty consistent in shooting and attempting takedowns and just being aggressive in general and letting his hands fly. But his defense on the feet sucks. He can be taken down. His game from his back isn't overtly great. He can get stuck there and kind of play guard for extended minutes as well. And that's kind of the big question in general I still have on Moda, is that we just haven't seen him be forced to really, defensively grapple all that much. Primarily a striker, hits reasonably hard. I think he should be a favorite in this fight, but I don't know. Minus 300 with still kind of those question marks is a little too high for me, because it could be it turn out to be the case where the guy just really can't defend takedowns all that well and can't defensively grapple all that well either. So definitely not willing to lay minus 300 on the guy, but I still think he should be favored.
And Lags, you said you didn't look at this, right?
He's bounced out.
Oh, shit. Okay. Well, he's right here. All right, Lags, you said you did not look at Moda.
No, I did not look at Van Camp. I looked at the Moda side, but I did not look at the Van Camp side, so no opinion from me.
All right, well, moving on. We got Zhu Rong taking on late notice fill-in Brandon Jenkins. I had actually bet Dakota Bush against Zhu Rong, and to be honest, I might bet Brandon Jenkins against Zhu Rong. I'm actually pretty strongly leaning towards it. I think Jenkins is plus 260 to plus 270, depending on what book you have. I guess my view on Zhu Rong is I don't think he's the worst fighter technically we've ever seen in the world. The problem is the guy has no work rate at all. He basically just lets people get off on him constantly. I bet Vargas against him just because I didn't really, outside of a counter two, I just didn't really see a lot of skills that Rong had. And that really hasn't changed for me. I do think he hits hard. And he has the ability to finish people. But I think if Rong is going to stick around in the UFC, it's going to be because he's something like a 155-pound Tyron Woodley, if that makes any sense. And by that, I mean, I largely think he's going to struggle to win minutes against pretty much any UFC caliber fighter. And he's going to be very reliant on hurting people and, relying on damage to win fights. And maybe he can. I don't really think he can. I think his work rate's too low, and I think his defensive grappling is too bad. And while I don't think he's an okay offensive grappler, I guess, but he's not particularly active either. So, yeah, I don't really rate Rong at all. I loved Bush here. And on the other side, we have Jenkins, who, like I said, I don't think Rong is going to beat many UFC caliber fighters on work rate. I don't think Brandon Jenkins is a UFC caliber fighter, to be honest, but I will say he will kind of just do things and be in your face. And to be honest, that might be enough against Rong. The thing for me is Jenkins has almost no defense, but at least from his regional tape, he seems absurdly durable. The only time he's been KO'd is by a flying knee. And, even coming up here, I think the natural instinct would be to assume it's a big step up in competition, but he actually has fought a decent schedule before the UFC, to be completely honest. And he's coming off a victory over Jacob Kilburn, who was recently in the UFC and obviously released from the UFC. But yeah, in general, I think Rong is more technical. If you told me, Rong would up his output 2x where it's been, sure, I wouldn't bet Jenkins, but he fought Kazula Vargas isn't exactly blowing people's hair back here, and he threw 78 strikes in 15 minutes. And so I feel pretty confident if he doesn't take out Jenkins via finish, it's going to be a very close fight at worst, with the potential for Jenkins just kind of outworking him over 15 minutes. My one concern would be I haven't really seen anything from Jenkins from his back, but Rong isn't some elite grappler on top. So I don't know. I think Jenkins is a pretty good spot. Luke, you said you had not looked at it, right?
Yeah, but I guess just my adding a little opinion on Rong, I did have a bet on Bush as well. To be honest, I think the kid could be a decent prospect, but he's only 21 years old. And to be honest, the only reason I think he's in the UFC is because they built the whole Performance Institute out in China, and they're trying to push more Chinese fighters. They said, the guy's 17-4. throw him in here. But if you go back and watch the guys he's beating, I mean, he's just beating a bunch of bums. And I largely agree with pretty much everything John said. I just have issues with his volume. Like if you told me 2 years ago that Cudalaba Vargas was going to go in there and land 100 significant strikes on him, and he was going to make Cudalaba Vargas look like a superstar, I probably would have been like, I don't know about that. I bet the over 1.5 there, but I don't know. Nonetheless, I think it's just too much too soon for the kid, to be honest. I need to tape Jenkins. Like you said, it could just be a slop fest, but should wrong be minus 300 here, I guess we'll figure it out.
Lags, how about you?
I guess I'll complete the trifecta. I also had a bet on Bush as well. I had 2 units minus 130, and I was looking to hit the sub bet as well because, like you guys touched on, Wrong has such poor defensive grappling tendencies, and I think Bush obviously could have pushed that for sure. But yeah, again, I haven't taped Jenkins as well.
Yeah, fair. Moving on, we got Kianzad against Raquel Pennington. I'm a bit torn here, to be honest. I've been toying with the idea of betting Pennington. It's funny because I think with Kianzad for her career so far, I've been directionally correct with how I view her game, but just can't seem to win a bet against her. I bet Eubanks, and my kind of take was if Eubanks got on top of her, she wouldn't get up. That was right, but Eubanks just kind of gassed out after a round. I thought Alexis Davis would be able to have success standing with her, and she did, but lost a close decision. And here it's like, it's a pretty big step up in competition, to be honest. And I do think, I don't know that Pennington is the striker Davis is. I will give credence to Davis's game. She is a very good boxer, and her game is clearly improved. The thing is, if Pennington puts her in the clinch, I don't really see how Penny gets out of there, and she could eat a ton of damage there. And if Pennington gets on top of her, it's probably a round and maybe the fight, to be completely honest. The thing for me, it's just like, as much as I respect Penny's striking, she has virtually no chance to finish this fight, in my opinion. Obviously, you can have a cut stoppage or maybe a flash KO and something crazy happens, but I don't think she finishes this fight at any kind of clip at all. And so with that being the case, it's like, well, what happens if she gets her absolutely ideal fight and they aren't in the clinch at all and she doesn't get put on the mat? What does it look like? Maybe slight lean Penny, whereas it's like if Pennington can have success in the clinch or get her down, she probably looks like a dominant favorite. And so, again, I'm thinking of playing Pennington here. I think she's just a much more proven fighter. And, again, I actually think something that's interesting, and I never do this, and I've been thinking about it, is playing the goes the distance here. Pennington hasn't finished anybody since 2015. And kind of what I mentioned, I don't think Kianzad can finish her. It took Amanda Nunes 5 rounds of just teeing off on Rocky to finish her. I'm pretty sure Penny's not knocking her out or flatlining her. I just think it's interesting. I actually think that's probably closer to 85%, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, I lean Pennington. Luke, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm kind of right along those same lines with you as well. I guess the real fight I went back and watched that I thought that you could potentially draw the most amount of parallels was Pennington and Aldana. Just, a more high output based striker, and a girl Aldana who I think lands statistically over 6 strikes per minute. I mean, Pennington actually suppressed her volume better than I think really any other girl has. I think she kept Aldana to right around 50 significant strikes or something like that, and Pennington really effectively counterboxed in that fight as well. And it was kind of in that third round where they were definitely in a funky kind of leg lock, calf slicer based position, but nonetheless, she actually did win based on positional control and damage from top in that third round to squeak that fight. So kind of to your point, John, if she can have even that kind of competitive fight with the girl in Aldana, who I respect more, than Penny, I think Pennington's the side more so with that grappling consideration. The issue I have and why I'm not betting her though is that if she isn't able to have any clinch or wrestling-based success, I do think just Penny doing things and throwing a lot could very well win her this fight at distance too. So that's kind of where my pause and hesitation is in staying off Pennington. But I do, gun to my head, I'd be betting Pennington here.
Lags, how about you?
Again, I guess I'll complete the trifecta on this fight as well. I like Rocky here as well, but have it better because, again, the grappling considerations, because I think that on the feet, slight edge Penny, I think, but Rocky, I think, has to get, a decent amount of cage control here or land a takedown or two just to, kind of even that out. So for me, I think odds are about right, to be honest with you. Again, normally in this kind of spots, you want to target that wily veteran with, the better strength and schedule and whatnot. But usually they're at plus odds. Like we're already getting -130, -140 panties. So like, I think the bookmakers got it right.
Yeah, fair. Moving on, we got a bet. I do have a bet finally here. We got Tafon and Shukri taking on Mike Rodriguez. It makes me a little nauseous to actually say this out loud, but I did bet Mike Rodriguez for 1.5 units here. The thing is, I guess for me, it's like I don't really rate Tafon's game like at all. I would say, I guess what I respect most about it is for his size, he's fairly high output. But I don't think he's a huge hitter. I don't think very technical. He has virtually no defense. In terms of his grappling, he's pretty bad. He's horrible defensively. We saw that against Park. And even offensively, it's kind of funny. When he has taken people down, he kind of looks like somebody who wants to do something with it, but just doesn't really know what to do once it gets there. He just doesn't. He's just so raw. Like, I'm not saying Tafon can't be good at some point. Just because, someone at that size with that output, that's a huge advantage. But I don't think he's ready for this level at all. On top of which, and Sean just called this out in the chat, Tafon is super slow. And if you look at Rod's, first of all, very fast. He's actually a lot bigger than Tafon is. I think he's 4 inches taller and has a couple inches of reach on him too. And, on top of that, it's like what has given Rod the biggest problems in his career thus far? It's takedowns. But like, I don't think Rod's like first level takedown get up game is terrible. It's really, guys who can actually advance position against him where he gets stuck. I don't think Tafon can do that. And frankly, I think Tafon is going to struggle to take him down if he does go that route, which he didn't attempt a single takedown against Park, I don't think, or maybe he attempted one. So I don't think that he's really going to go that route. And then you look at just like the clinch here. Tafon has that tendency. He's not going to stay at distance. He's going to bomb into the clinch. Rod's a pretty legit Muay Thai striker with a pretty legit clinch game. I think he fucks Tafon up there, to be completely honest. I look at the fight and it's like, if it was anybody more reliable than Mike Rodriguez, I'd be on him heavy in this spot. I think Rod is a superior fighter. I worry a little bit about his boxing in the pocket, but he beat the fucking shit out of Ed Herman. Would anybody really be confident in Tafon in a striking match with Ed Herman? I wouldn't be, and so it's like, I think Rod should be a clear favorite. I worry about, his fragility and potential to collapse in the fight, but I don't think this line makes any sense at all. Luke, what do you think?
Yeah, this is just a massive pass for me. I'm just not a fan of either guy. Personally, I've bet against both of them a handful of times now. I definitely agree with a lot of what you said. I guess where my slight disagreement is just that from a striking standpoint, and when Rodriguez comes into the pocket, I just feel like he kind of overextends on shots. And really, he just hasn't shown many good components outside of the first round. I know he beat the shit out of Ed Herman. Largely, Tafon's also an earlier finisher too. I get that. I just don't know if I love his overall general distance management, and Tafon's going to come forward and throw shit. So I actually kind of think this one does hit the cards, to be honest. And it's kind of a greasy, sweaty, sloppy type fight. And I just kind of lean Tafon, but it's another fight that I don't really have a strong opinion on at all.
Yeah, fair. Lags, what do you think?
So I will play contrarian to Luke, and I think this fight doesn't go to the cards. I actually think a sneaky play on this fight is the under 2.5 rounds at -125. So I think, like you touched on, that early collapse, the fragility of Mike Rodriguez, it's there, but it's probably just early from Tafon. Like you see, slows down crazily in this fight. So I think Mike Rodriguez could finish him again in the first round. He just honestly just has to avoid the first couple minutes. And I think the later this fight goes, really, I think Mike Rodriguez has a ton of just like in the clinch. He's got solid knees in the clinch, solid elbows outside of the clinch. I like the under 2.5 here.
Yeah, fair. I don't hate it. I mean, they're both going to get hit, so big boys in a small cage, as they say.
Right. With minimal wrestling, I think because I think Mike Rodriguez can keep it on the feet.
Yeah, I'd be very, very surprised to see extended Tafon top time, to be honest. Could be wrong. I mean, it is Mike Rodriguez, but it would surprise me. Moving on, we got a fun one. We got Joaquin Buckley coming back off a pretty brutal knockout, taking on Antonio Ahoyo. Luke, what do you think here?
Yeah, originally I thought I was going to be betting Ahoyo, and I'm just kind of passing. I'm going with a bit more of a contrarian stance here. I played the over 1.5 here. Obviously, both guys aren't great defensively necessarily, but I do think Ahoyo does have some tools that's going to make it just generally more difficult for Buckley to close distance. And I think we could actually see, I wouldn't say a slow paced fight, but a slower paced fight than a traditional Buckley fight. And I don't think Ahoyo's gas tank is great. I don't think Buckley's gas tank is necessarily great either. It's definitely going to be a sweaty one. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm going with instead of a side. But I do think there is some merit to an Ahoyo play. Ultimately, why I just stayed off mainly for like 3 big reasons. The gas tank, his willingness to not punch very much, and his just willingness to not do a ton in general, which is why I can't back him. Just for me, when I'm betting a guy kind of around that price tag, I just want him to, I guess, quote unquote, fight for my money. And I don't necessarily know if you're going to get that from Ahoyo. We could have, the CEO of EPO Ahoyo come in here and we'll see. But I think from a stylistic standpoint, like I said, I do think there are components from Ahoyo's game that can give Buckley troubles at range to get inside. So interesting fight.
Lags, how about you?
So interesting fight. Like on paper, like money line wise, you would think like obviously Ahoyo was a spot. Like again, like in the last fight against Theron Win, I was, had a unit and a half on Ahoyo and I played him by KO plus 650. But like Luke touched on, it's like the output is not there, the cardio is not there. It's like dude gas is like halfway through the first round, honestly. Like it's horrible. So really in this fight, it's kind of interesting because again, like you touched on, it's like it's mostly going to be a striking affair. So like Ahoyo is going to have his chance to KO Buckley, but like the output's not really there. But like I tweeted out earlier today, an interesting at least I would say is the Ahoyo KO round 1 is 12-1. But outside of that, yeah.
Is that real?
Yeah, it's on FanDuel. Yep.
Okay.
So I will say that is interesting because, like I said, output cardio is not great. So I think round 1 is probably his best chance here. But yeah, 12-1 round 1.
That's interesting. I'll probably poke that, to be honest. That seems crazy, to be honest with you. I don't have a bet here, at least not yet. I had kind of been hoping to get a better number on Ahoyo, and it's gone the other way. I think he's at plus 170 right now. It's a weird fight. I'm not going to go too far into it because you guys broke it down a fair bit. I guess I think I have less concerns about gas tanks with Ahoyo just because the 3 fights where I've seen him gas bad, all were very, very grappling intensive, which – I don't really expect Buckley to kind of push. Not that I don't expect him to push a pace, to push that kind of a fight on Ahoyo. He may try to clinch up with him, but I don't think he's going to be diving at legs all fight. But, the cardio is a concern. Don't get me wrong. I do think the output worries me a lot. And the other problem for me is just like Ahoyo doesn't really do much with his hands. Buckley is begging to get jabbed in the face over and over and over again by anybody. But like Ahoyo just doesn't really let his hands go much. He's very content to just kind of throw kicks and knees up the middle, elbows in the clinch, stuff like that. And so he may concede Buckley closing distance here, and he has pretty bad defensive tendencies in the pocket, which scare me. But on the other side of things, I think Buckley is pretty shit, to be completely honest. Like, as much as you can chalk up a DeChirico head kick to randomness, and look, any head kick is fairly random, but I will say Buckley closing distance puts himself in a lot of places to get finished. He comes in with his head ducked every time. He's begging to get kneed up the middle, and he just dips. He doesn't tend to cover up for head kicks either. And so, those are 2 things Ahoyo does all the time, or throw knees up the middle and throw head kicks. And I could just very easily see Ahoyo KOing him. So I do like the KO prop round 1. If it goes past it, like I favor Buckley on volume. I think if he can close distance effectively, which he doesn't always do, but I think if he can close distance effectively, he's got a pretty good shot to knock Ahoyo out. But if it goes 15 minutes, like If it goes 15 minutes, it probably means Buckley is not really hurting Ahoyo consistently. And if that's the case, it means Ahoyo is probably having his fight, in my opinion. Like, I'd favor Buckley, like, pretty substantially in a decision, but I don't think it's the kind of case where a decision is game over for Buckley either, or for Ahoyo either, if you get what I mean. I think there's maybe a little bit of value on Ahoyo here at the current line. I wanted plus 186 to play him. Does not look like he's going to get back there. I will play him if he gets back there. But I do think, the volume issue is enough that I don't really want to back him on the money line here. Though I am going to take a stab at that KO prop. That seems fucking nuts to me. Moving on, we got Nate Mannis taking on Tony Gravely. Lags, I'll start with you. What do you got here?
So I got 1.5 on Tony Gravely, minus 185. And I think really a lot of people are just looking at the Johnny Munoz Jr. fight the wrong way. Let's see, Nate stuffed 2 of 16 takedowns from Johnny. But like when you really look into it, it's like he was able to control him for nearly 10 minutes on 5 days' notice, not to mention. So like, not to, just play that MMA match, but it's like we have a D1 wrestler here, Tony Gravely, much better wrestler, much better striking, getting his hands mixed in, and he's got much better cardio, I think. Obviously, even a full camp Johnny Munoz, I still think Tony Gravely's got better cardio. So it's like, what is Tony Gravely going to do to Nate Mannis if he gets him down? So I really do think that Tony could just grind here, and honestly, he could be able to find a ground and pound finish here because I don't think that Nate Mannis' defensive tendencies are all that great on the mat.
Yeah, I have 2 units on Gravely here, minus 165, and to be honest, I think he might be worth playing up, even up to minus 200. My view is kind of similar to yours, Lags. I worry a bit that Gravely, when he's in space, is there to get hit and hurt, and I wouldn't say he's fragile because he hasn't really gotten flatlined, but he is. I don't love the way he reacts to flush shots, if I'm being honest. But with that being the case, I kind of agree with your assessment on the grappling. Like, there is Munoz, obviously, if they put on gis, would fuck Gravely up in a grappling match. But in terms of wrestling, there's a sizable gap between Johnny Munoz and Tony Gravely. Gravely's a very, very good wrestler. If you actually look at the guys that have beaten Gravely, they're all very, very good grapplers. And I don't think Mannis is that, to be honest. I expect, Mannis is not a guy with really any kind of ring craft at all. He's very easy to back up to the fence. You kind of saw it in the Luke Sanders fight. Until Sanders kind of gassed himself out, he was basically having his way there, closing distance at will, even though he was much shorter. I don't think Gravely's going to have much issue closing distance here. Maybe Mannis can put up some resistance early to the takedowns, but Gravely's a very, very good chain wrestler. I think he gets him down. And to be honest, I think he's going to get dominant positions pretty frequently here. I wouldn't say he finishes him because obviously Mannis has never been finished. So I don't want to go that far. But I do think to say the line is short or that Mannis' value, you have to be relying on Mannis to be able to keep this in space for 7 to 8 minutes. And I don't really see how you can do that, to be honest. I think Gravely's about 70 to 75% where I capped it. I think he's a pretty safe spot. I actually like Gravely's game a good bit, to be honest. Luke, what do you think?
Yeah, I like Gravely in the spot as well. I think it's a great fight for him, to be completely honest. Like, I think that just the general type of game that he brings is very, antithetical to what Nate Mannis really needs to succeed. He's a boxer by nature, but kind of just plays the mid-range, slower to lower methodical pace where Tony Gravely's going to push a heavy pace. He's going to go for it. I think his hands have improved a lot. And Tony Gravely is easily the best wrestler that he's fought, who I think can potentially put him in some tricky spots on the mat, who is aggressive on the ground and isn't necessarily just lay and pray. And given, just the amount of success that Luke Sanders even had in that first round leads me to believe that, or I should say, I don't know why that Tony Gravely wouldn't be able to have striking-based success in this fight either. I kind of think Mannis is, I don't want to say entirely KO or bust, but I think it's either that or he's going to need like really big moments in multiple rounds to win minutes in this fight, either on the feet or standing, in my opinion.
You there, John?
We lose John?
No, I'm back. All right.
Okay.
My internet went out. That was really weird.
Yeah, good. And then I'll touch real quick. I'll touch real quick on the one comment from PayPal. Gravely has slowed down, in some of these fights, but it's like when he's meeting a ton of grappling resistance, and not to mention like the size of these guys that he's fighting. Geraldo de Freitas is a fucking tank, whereas like I don't really see that here. Like I don't think he's gonna meet that same grappling resistance here.
Yeah, fair. Moving on, we got Armin Sarukian coming back into the cage here. Big prospect, taking on Christos, the Spartan Giagos. Luke, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't think a hot take for me here. I think Saryukin's the goods and he's legit. What I will say in like some defense of Giagos, I wouldn't be shocked if he had a decent first round here. I just don't see really much. I'm not saying that I think he wins the first round necessarily, but that just traditionally tends to be, really where the guy's strong, because usually it's after that 7.5 minute mark he just cardio dumps, and there just isn't much left after that. And given that Saryukin, put up more resistance against Islam Makhachev than pretty much anyone did out there, well-rounded, just a pretty bad style matchup for Giagos. Honestly, I don't know if Armin finishes him, though. I kind of think he continues with the trend of the decision route, just because Giagos can defensively grapple. Like, he's been put in quite a bit of bad spots, but what I will say is he gets out of pretty much like all of them for better or for worse. So I actually don't think he gets finished here, but just loses a dominant decision.
Lags, how about you?
So this is the first leg of my two leg parlay. So I have Armin by a sub or decision at minus 250, and I personally think it's worth the price because, I mean, like touched on there, outside of the first round, really with Giagos, I don't think his the threat of him in this fight is really going to be that substantial. Just because, I mean, the cardio dump is really insane. I just think Armin could be able to just fuck him at will here. Honestly, the second round, third round, it's just going to look like probably he honestly could 10-8 the second and third rounds personally, and like you said, find the finish. And that's kind of what's holding me off. I do think the round 3 decision also at minus 175 is in a bad spot, but again, it's like the cardio dump is so bad that I think Armin pushes such a pace that we could see an earlier finish. So I know Armin sub as well at plus 340. Again, not a bad.
Interesting.
Yep.
I don't hate it. It's funny because I tried to come up with a hot take for you guys and a bet on Christos Giagos here.
I didn't expect it from John. No, I'm going to be honest. I didn't expect it from you.
The problem is, like, I like Christos. I largely have always been fairly bullish on Christos Giagos, I guess, in comparison to the rest of the market, because I don't think he's unskilled. Like, I'm not saying he's a top 15 guy or anything like that, but he's a good athlete. He's not a bad striker, and he's a pretty good wrestler. We both touched on his cardio is fucking dog shit, though. It's really and in a fight where you look at when he's won decisions, they're against guys he can just grapple fuck with ease, which we know unequivocally that unless Armin tears every ligament in his knee, that's not going to happen here. So it's just like, I agree with Luke. I could see Giagos coming out, scrambling with him early, having some success standing early in this fight. But ultimately, I think Armin winning, I think even Giagos at his best, while he's super fresh, is no better than like 40-60 when it comes to Armin, in a round. And then it's like, as the tank wanes, he's just going to get fucked on the last 2 rounds. I think if Giagos is smart, he'll just bite the mouthpiece and go crazy early and just try to meme him. That is really seriously though. How else does he win this fight? If he should do what Kevin Karoum did against Roosevelt Roberts, just go forward and swing your arms and hope you connect. That's the only way he's winning this fight, in my opinion. He does hit hard enough, so him cracking Armin wouldn't be that crazy. But yeah, I mean,
I just trust the IQ of Armin compared to Roosevelt Roberts per se. If you that interest, obviously.
Well, everything. I trust everything.
Well, yeah, I know. Not to compare apples to apples, obviously, but yeah, you know what I mean.
No, I know what you mean. It's like, do I agree with the line? Men's lightweight having a 90% implied favorite? I don't know. I mean, it's one of those fights though where like either Giagos needs an early KO to win the fight, or something has to go drastically wrong for Armin here that was not caused by Christos Giagos. You know what I mean? So it's like, John,
so you can get Giagos in round 1 for 18-1, and you can get him KO round 1 24-1.
I don't feel good about either of those. What I'm saying is I think Giagos should do that. He's probably going to do what he always does: come out, maybe try to grapple a little, throw some hooks, and then get killed when we hit the 6 or 7 minute mark here. Yeah, I mean Armin should handle him. I think I think we all think Armin's a future star, so he really should take care of business here. I tried to find the contrarian angle on it, wasn't there in my opinion. So moving on, we got Mandy Boehm taking on Ariane Lipski. Luke, did you have a bet here?
I do not know.
Okay, well take it away anyway.
Yeah. I've seen a handful of bets on Lipski this week, and I definitely understand it from some perspective that it, like, hindsight could be like just this phenomenal buy down spot on her, that she's fought some tough girls, but I don't like my big issue with her. Like, let's throw the wrestling aside for 2 seconds. Like, really, what got her to the dance, and why she came into with so much steam into the UFC was that, the girl was just aggressive as shit and was going forward and swinging to death and hurting girls, knocking girls out, outworking them, doing that type of deal. She did wrestle and get some subs too. But I guess that's my issue with her. Like, in the UFC, we've just seen so little of that from her, even when her fights have been at space. Like, the aggression components from her are just in bursts in very minimal capacities. Like, her output in general just isn't really there. And it's, I guess, of the grappling of this fight, I think either girl landing a takedown could be around, because they've both looked pretty horrible on bottom, to be honest, with not much of a concept to work up. What I will say is I've at least seen, I guess, maybe some better submission components from Boehm in recent years, but her strength competition's been crazy low. On the feet, if Lipski just kind of gives Boehm, who's like a rangy, longer girl, just space, who I think might be better in the clinch, I think Boehm wins the fight, but it's not one that I want to invest my money in at all. But like I said, it could turn out to be a great buy down spot on Lipski. I don't think this Boehm girl is anything great, but I just have no confidence in Lipski at this point whatsoever. I think the girl is one of the biggest frauds in the history of the modern era of the UFC, to be honest.
Lags, how about you?
Jeez, ripping her apart before I go. I won't be as tough on her. I do think, again, I do think it's a solid striker, because I don't think Mandy is all that great of a striker. She's pretty hittable. But again, it's like, man, Lipski's takeout defense is just so horrible that, Mandy in the time off could have improved her grappling a little bit. So again, pass for me as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm passing. It's like, what's funny to me about this fight is, like, I agree with every word you said about Lipski, Luke, but at least with Lipski, you could see what the UFC thought they saw in her when they brought her to the UFC. With Mandy Boehm,
we all thought we saw in her before.
Right, I bet her against Joanne Calderwood. That did not age well at all. But like, that was so bad. But like, I don't get what the UFC sees in Mandy Boehm at all, really. And I'm not saying she can't win this fight, by the way. I'm just saying, like, this girl isn't sticking around in the UFC. Like, are you kidding me? I don't really get it. But in terms of the fight, like, I do think Lipski's the better striker. I think she should probably win the striking pretty clean. But like, her ground game, and I'm often of the mind it's like, you can't really take regional ground games that seriously, even with UFC fighters who have shown a lack of competency there, just because the level difference is so vast. But Lipski's a regional grappler. Like, that's the thing. It's like, it is so bad when she ends up on bottom. It's just like, I've seen Boehm attempt takedowns many times. I don't think she's a good wrestler or anything special, but like, would it shock me if she panic wrestles, hits 2 takedowns, and holds Lipski down for 8 minutes? No, it wouldn't shock me at all. And like, that's kind of the problem here, because to lay it with Lipski at -110 with what her career has been, I kind of have to know that she's not going to get stuck on her back, because if it turns out Boehm can just hold her down, then this looks horrible in hindsight, right? And even standing, it's like, I do favor Lipski, but like, I don't think Lipski's going to finish her. And if I don't think she's going to finish her, it's probably at least competitive-ish on the feet. Boehm's aggressive, if not very good. And so I lean Lipski. Like, if I had to bet a side, I'd be betting Lipski. but I don't feel like particularly passionate about it. You know, it is, I think you nailed it, Luke. It's potentially a great buy down spot. Like, I've talked to some people I respect who love Lipski in the spot, and I get it. I do get it, but I don't. I just can't really get there. I've tried that ship too many times now, and I'm done. That's it.
What else? Last thing on the fight. Not to sway you or anything, but Lipski by decisions plus 190.
I don't even like, because I mean, even with that, right? Like, I don't expect Lipski to finish her, but what if it turns out Boehm can just be guard subbed instantly? There's just so many questions in the fight. I think Lipski's more reliable, and if I had to bet it, I'd bet her. I just don't feel good about it. Like Luke said, one of the biggest frauds in MMA history.
Tearing her fucking apart on Club and Sub Podcast live.
Moving on.
I'm not even trying to be that big of a dick, though, but if you really remember the steam that she had when she came in, people were saying this girl was going to be like a future fucking world champion.
Luke, I'm fine with you being a dick. Just lube it up beforehand.
That wasn't right for the heat.
I agree with the take completely. Moving on, we got Jan Cudalaba taking on Devin Clark. Luke, what do you got here?
Oh, man. I really want to bet Clark, to be honest. There are just so many data points to suggest that Cudalaba is a round one or bust fighter. And it's just one of those spots where a round one Cudalaba KO is a very, very live outcome in this fight. So I've kind of been torn on like how I've wanted to approach it. Like, do I just take Clark and my blood pressure medication pre-fight, or do I wait to just bet Clark live? Because I think if this does get out of the first round, Clark winning 2 and 3, I think is, or I should say happens at a pretty high clip, especially just given his wrestling base. And I think he actually can wrestle Iwan, especially when he's more tired too. And Clark's just more proven to be able to win decisions. But yeah, like I said, I think him getting iced early is just I just don't like his defensive tendencies. We've seen like guys come at him. He'll legitimately turn his back, run. He'll shell like reverse with his face facing the cage. And oh God, it's just like, if he does that shit and like Cudalaba kills him, I'm probably going to hang myself in my closet. But it's just one of those spots where guys plus money who I have a pretty strong degree of confidence that he wins an extended fight here. So I do think Devin Clark is the side personally. If you're betting Cudalaba, you have to be playing his KO ITD round one. The guy's won 2 fights that have gotten out of the first round in 21 pro fights. Like, there's just no reason why you should be laying money line chalk on Cudalaba. If you like him, like I said, that's great, but then play the better numbers, in my opinion.
Lags, what do you think here?
Betting cowards is never fun, but yet John has a bet here on Mike Rodriguez. But as we get to this fight with Cudalaba, I don't really disagree anything with Luke said. Like, I do like, I think the Cudalaba round one is a high outcome here. And honestly, I think I might just be taking a small half unit stab on the KO round one, which is plus 310, which I think is absolutely insane because as we see outside of round one, Cudalaba's success really drains. So I don't really hate people, like you touched on, I know earlier, Luke, with the KO round one with Clark money line. I think that's a solid spot too. Again, you're getting a 3-1 and a plus 140 on the money line, but I might just be taking a small half unit stab on the round one KO.
Yeah. It's funny because like I've always kind of liked Cudalaba despite that obvious massive glaring hole in his cardio, because I don't think like Cudalaba, if you gave him 15 minutes of gas, I actually think would be a pretty good light heavyweight. He's active. I actually think he's reasonably technical. He's a good grappler, both offensively and defensively. But like we know what it is at this point. Even in fights that haven't been fought at absurd paces, he's slowed down in. And so it's like we know he's going to slow down. But kind of to Luke's point, I think the KO happens it's very, very live. I bet Clark against Menifield because I knew Menifield, being the bum that he is, was reliable to just dive into the clinch, and I felt pretty good about Devin Clark in a clinch. Just like I feel pretty good if Cudalaba goes to clinch him up, that even if he's having success there, Clark's going to hold his own. The thing is, I think Cudalaba is a better striker than Menifield, and if he stays back and is at distance, he's going – I shouldn't say he's going to. He's a very strong chance of hurting Clark. And like, you guys touched on it, Clark will kind of like run away from fights. I don't like the way he reacts to shots. I never have. It's not hard to imagine him just turtling up and letting Cudalaba finish him the first time he eats a big shot in an exchange. But with that said, it's like, what percentage can you really assign Cudalaba at KO1? Is it higher than 30? Like, I don't – that seems like – about right? I struggle to put it much higher than that. And then it's like beyond that, how often does he win the fight outside of round one? I think it's massively against him. Clark is going to start hitting takedowns at some point in this fight when he starts slowing down. We have seen quit on the mat before, and even when he hasn't gotten finished there, just give up position. I'd be inclined to say live bet it, except I feel like we've seen this enough times now where we're like, oh, it could be a live betting opportunity, and the books are catching on to it and just lining it right. Like unless Clark is near dead with a gash open on his head at the end of round one, I'm guessing he's probably going to be a favorite going into round two,
Even if he clearly loses one.
Right. Exactly. Obviously, if that's not the case, then yes, live bet it after one. But I agree. I think Clark's probably value. I haven't bet him. I'm probably going to, though. It's just – it's like after the KO happens, it's going to be like, well, me and Luke and Lags are going to be messaging. You're like, well, we know we're on the right side no matter what happened there, right? It's just like I hate spots like this, but I do think Clark is right. It's just it's nauseating again, similar to Mike Rodriguez to take the stab. Moving on, we got the main event that nobody asked for. We got Anthony Smith in another main event taking on. I don't know how Ryan Spann made a main event, but here we are. This is really kind of like the UFC reject card that we threw together here. Luke, you want to take this away?
Yeah, not like some overtly strong opinion. I favor Smith. I think him 65% is probably fair for the primary point that it is a 25-minute fight. Spann is largely an early finisher. He's another guy kind of similar to a Cudalaba who's only really won a handful of fights out of the second round, and even a couple of the ones that have went to the cards from have been splits as well. So, if he doesn't get Anthony Smith out of here early, I just don't really see much merit to him down the stretch in this fight. But what I will say, in defense of Spann, Smith has shown to be a slow starter in certain points. Sometimes he goes out there and finishes people in the first round, a la Devin Clark, when the guy never wrestles and he just shoots takedown right away. But so I think that is kind of the main credence. Like if Smith is going to sit there and try to, just take 5 minutes, play the long game 5-round fight, that makes sense. But also that could theoretically give Spann chances if he just goes crazy. But then again, Spann isn't always reliable to, go nuts either with his volume. So in general, I just think Anthony Smith has more tools, more proven, more battle tested over potential 25 minutes. But what I will say, I don't really see many scenarios of this fight hitting the cards. I think the fights don't go the distance like 77% of the time in the last 5 or 6 years. So I think someone gets a finish. I think Smith finishes them, but Smith is also just another really difficult guy to trust who I could not bring myself to lay a minus number next to be honest.
Lags, how about you?
So I alluded to this, a little bit earlier, you touched on here, main event nobody asked for really, but again, it's like I think Anthony's put in these main events because his fights deliver violence. In his last 8 fights, they've all been main events, and 6 of them have finished. Obviously, the 2 that haven't finished, the Rakic fight, which was a 3-round main event, which I would say, if that went 5, probably a decent chance that finishes, and then the John Jones fight, which had its decent amount of chances to finish again. But this fight, this closes. Well, first, I would say this closes out my parlay earlier with Armin, the sub decision. With the fight doesn't go the distance at -280, and that parlay closes at -111, 2 units on that. And then I have 1 unit on the fight doesn't start round 4 at -118, which I think it's now up to -138. Yeah, I mean, similar to Luke touched on. Spann is a front runner, and then I think largely if he doesn't get that early finish, Smith is very live to take over. I mean, both of these guys, though, are finishers in their fight. Spann, 84% finish rate, and Smith has a 91% finish rate. And both of these guys get finished in their losses as well. So I think we get a violent main event.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I almost laid it with Smith here. I probably won't. My issue, the thing is, I think Smith's a much better fighter than Ryan Spann. I've been very anti-Anthony Smith over the years, but the one thing I give him credit for he has improved his striking. He's actually had, if you actually outside of the Rockage fight, where his leg just basically got kicked to shreds in the first 2 minutes of the fight, he's actually handled himself against pretty decent competition on the feet pretty well, excepting John Jones, obviously. And I think while this is on the feet, he probably tools on Spann, to be honest. Obviously, Spann's a big hitter, but I honestly don't think the striking is very close. I guess why I'm passing it is, even let's go back to his last fight when he fought Jimmy Crute. Smith looked good for about 4 minutes, but then Crute hurts his leg, and suddenly Crute realizes, oh, I should probably try to wrestle him since I can't walk now. And he's getting the takedowns without any issue at all. And Spann, I don't really rate any aspect of Spann's game significantly, but he is a pretty willing grappler. And I don't think it's going to decision, but I can't get it out of my head that maybe Smith ends up turtling up on his back and getting finished, or just with that turtle position that he seems to be the only fighter in the UFC to ever find himself in, and it happens every fight. Plus, he will accept bottom and play guard, and that scares me that Spann could potentially hit takedowns here and do that. It's very hard to lay a minus number next to somebody when they will concede takedowns pretty much at will and will concede a lot of minutes on bottom. So I'm not laying Smith. What I will say is I do think the chances of Smith subbing Spann are actually fairly high here, to be completely honest. Smith subbed Clark, and I don't think Spann is safer or better than Devin Clark is on top. It could just, turn out. I was chatting with somebody earlier this week who was like, it might just be a 30-35% outcome, Smith subbing Clark from bottom, and it might be.
It opened at 6-1, and now it's down to plus 380. I think it is now.
Yeah, well, yeah, I can't believe I missed 6-1 because I think that's very live. Because for Spann to win, in my opinion, anyway, for Spann to win this fight at a high clip, it has to involve a lot of grappling, right?
And then, so I would add in real quick, John. Again, if you're looking for a play here, again, not to persuade you here or whatnot, but Smith inside distance is plus 110 and touched on 91% finish rate. So it's do you see this fight hitting the cards? If this gets later in the fight, if this stays on the feet, Smith is probably teeing off on him. If Spann's shooting a gas takedown, he's probably subbing him.
Yeah, I don't really disagree with that. And especially seeing how dire Spann looked in the last 3 minutes against Alvey in what was a 15-minute fight. If he looks like that here against Smith, outside of the Glover fight where Smith also fractured his orbital about halfway through that fight, Smith's never really slowed down dramatically. He probably does finish him here. I don't hate that. So, yeah, my lean Smith, again, it's a fight where I would say favorite or pass. I don't see how you can play Spann at plus 130 here. I don't think it's a good bet at all. I'd rather be betting
inside the distance. If you're playing Spann, I think you'd have to.
Yeah, I'd rather just have my money on the guy who's fought much better competition, who I just think has more skills everywhere, really, in Smith. It's Anthony Smith. We're not Anthony Smith fans here, but I've spent the last 3 years fading Anthony Smith. It would be really tough to start betting him here, But yeah, that'll do it. It's not the sexiest card in the world. I do think these fights will deliver on entertainment, even though the level is quite low. Next week, however, we have a fire card. We have, I believe, UFC at 266 is next week. Is that the one?
Yeah.
Something like that?
Yes.
Yeah, so we got UFC 260 next, Volkanovski, Ortega. I think we're going to have a lot of bets. To be honest, the next month looks pretty good, so I'm pretty excited for it.
And in a month, a little preview for the people, we might be heading out for the PFL finals. It's going to be in Miami. Luke and I will be there. John, maybe.
I might be there. I might be there. I'm still frying the wife.
So Club and Sub might be live for the PFL finals here in Miami. So,
well, if we do that, we're gonna have to go live early in the day. That's
true.
Maybe at a beach bar, sipping margaritas and appletinis. Who knows?
Yep, down for sure.
Luke's not allowed to drink Busch while in Miami. But yeah, guys, thanks for coming out tonight. We'll be back next Wednesday at 10. Really good card then, so I'm sure we'll have much hotter takes than what we had here. But as usual, I'm me, John, at MMA Fox, Luke at SWR_betting, and Lags at Lags_the Capper. And guys, if you like the show, drop a like and subscribe. Good luck this weekend, and we'll see you next week. Peace.